Hello Masters, and welcome back to our next foundational video for living in alignment with reality, living this life of reality, where we're going to be talking about feeling our feelings. Okay, so for the next 3 videos we're going to be talking about feeling and how important making feeling a part of our intelligence system is when we're looking to live in alignment with reality. Now, again, I am speaking all of this under the assumption that you have read and worked through the Process of Awakening to Reality course, and that you understand how to feel your feelings, and that you understand that there's a difference between feeling our feelings and investigating them and exploring them, and feeling what we feel and then thinking what we think our feelings mean and thinking what we think our feelings are telling us and believing that and allowing ourselves to be trapped in our childhood state in trauma, in lies and stories that are not true, and using our feelings to justify that, right? So we never want to use our feelings as a way of justifying that our stories about ourselves and reality that are really deeply painful are true. And this is part of what learning to be a successful feeler is all about. That we first understand that when we are working with feeling, we are doing so with the intention that we can do it from the observer perspective. That we are feeling our feelings while being able to witness what it feels like in the body, being able to witness the thoughts we have about our feelings, and that we have the awareness and the understanding that anything that feels like shit isn't true. And again, this is a massive leap for a lot of us and a massive step to take, where we no longer allow ourselves to say that if something feels familiar, that it's true. That we no longer say that the worse something feels, the more true it is. We are starting to understand that our feelings are speaking to us, and that they often contradict what we are expecting we should be thinking and feeling, what we expect we should be experiencing, who we think we should be, who we think we shouldn't be, what things we think are good or bad. And that is part of why we want to connect with our feelings. Because the intellect can be trained to believe anything. The intellect can be trained to believe that anything is good, that anything is bad, and we can come up with reasons and evidence to prove our thoughts correct. But if reality doesn't align with that, the body and the feelings cannot be convinced otherwise. The body and the brain can get stuck in trauma. The body and feeling can get stuck in the childhood perspective that we aren't lovable and therefore we aren't safe. That things aren't perfect and therefore we're not safe. That life is never going to get better and that we have no autonomy and no capacity. The mind can get stuck in that story. And then the body is going to react to that with a heavy, dark, painful sensation. The body is going to react to harm with heavy and dark and painful feelings. The body is going to react to perceiving harm with painful and dark and heavy feelings. So we come to this feeling work understanding that we aren't just going to believe whatever thoughts we think and use our feelings as justification for those thoughts anymore. That when things feel heavy, when things feel terrible in our body, that is a trigger for us that there's more information. There's something to be processed, there's something to be worked through, or the way that we're perceiving what's happening isn't reality, or the way that we're perceiving we should be, or the way that we're perceiving we shouldn't be isn't reality. That there's more to experience and there's more to look for here. And we're really coming at our feeling work with the long term in mind. Understanding that just because we feel something and we question it doesn't mean we understand right now. We are going to be patient with ourselves in the processing of our feelings, in the investigation of our feelings, because our feelings are complex, reality is complex, and working through what feels bad because I believe something that isn't reality, and what feels bad because it actually is harmful in real reality, learning to figure these things out takes time. And the first step is always that we allow ourselves to feel at all. And I really suggest that we don't wait for emergencies before we will make feeling a practice. Rather, and also huge thing, I do not believe that it is actually helpful to force ourselves to sit in negative emotion and negative feeling for extended periods of time, thinking that the longer we sit in it, the more we're going to heal it. Okay, that feel it to heal it idea is partially true. There are seeds of wisdom in that. But it's not that if we are feeling terrible about something, if we just sit with it long enough, that we will heal ourselves. Okay, we want to balance the idea that yes, we want to give ourselves experience of feeling where we are learning to be the observer of our feelings. So we first learn to feel what we are feeling in the body, where it's happening, and what the actual sensation is. So we start to let go of our stories of what this feeling means emotionally, or what this feeling means about my reality, or should I do this, or should I do that, or what. And we learn to just say, okay, no, I'm just going to practice feeling the feeling. Where do I feel the feeling? What does it feel like in terms of sensation? That is the first key. We also want to practice feeling the feeling, seeing that the feeling doesn't kill us. That we start to release our resistance to feeling and all the meaning we have attached to it, what it's going to mean if we let ourselves feel a feeling, by just witnessing that it's just a feeling. It's just heaviness, it's just static, it's just energy, it's just whatever it is. It's just a feeling, and the feeling in and of itself is not going to kill me. The next thing is we start to be compassionate observers of ourselves in the feeling. We learn to have compassion for the being that is experiencing the feeling. And we learn to have compassion for the feeling itself, that the feeling is just a messenger. The feeling is not trying to kill us, and it's not trying to make us terrible. Like, it's not trying to ruin our lives. And we're holding on to that last foundation, that shame, guilt, and doom are always lies. So if we're sensing a feeling in relation to a shame, guilt, or doom story, we know that that feeling is telling us that that story isn't true. The feeling is not there. That heavy, dark feeling is not there when we have a guilty sensation, or when we have a shameful thought, or when we believe in doom. The feeling is not there to prove that our thoughts are correct. Anything that feels like shit is up for questioning. Yeah? So we're learning to be the witness. We're learning to feel without story. We're learning to then weigh our stories against our feeling with the foundational, fundamental understanding that anything that feels like shit isn't the truth. We might not know what the truth is. There may be elements of what we're thinking and feeling and believing that are true, but we're not going to say this thing feels terrible and therefore it is real, which is what most of us have been trained to do. And then, like I say, we want to have boundaries with this feeling work. It is far more productive and helpful for us to set aside 5, 10, 15 minutes on a daily basis to practice feeling from the observer perspective, and then questioning the thoughts and using our tools for that 10 to 15 minutes, and then reorienting ourselves to current reality and getting on with our day, and doing that over and over and over and over and over again as a way of life, than it is to try to force ourselves to sit in painful emotion until we have a revelation. I really think that this is something that is deeply overlooked in the healing and the feeling and the processing world, is that there absolutely is a such thing as trying to feel too much, as sitting in our feelings too much, as doing this work so that it's just re-traumatizing us. Having boundaries where we specifically are going to do our processing work and our feeling work, and then we're going to move on with our day, especially when the feelings and the processing are about the past, is so much more productive than trying to force ourselves to sit for hours and hours a day, thinking if I just sit with it long enough, it'll go away. It's so much more productive than forcing ourselves to take away all of our coping mechanisms and all of our distractions and thinking that that's going to lead to a revelation. Usually that's just going to lead to burnout. Usually that's just going to lead to overwhelm. So we want to be careful with this practice. And then the second thing is we do want to practice tuning in every once in a while during our day so that we can start to notice patterns. Because here's the real thing about the feeling work, is it's going to be the most useful for us when we've collected data about patterns. For a while, our feeling work isn't going to make a lot of sense to us. It is going to contradict our conditioning. It's going to contradict what we think we should and shouldn't be and shouldn't be doing. And that's not going to make sense to our intellect. And it's just going to be kind of a mess in there. And that's okay. Because as we practice over time, practicing feeling over time, okay, so what do I feel when I'm in this situation? What does that feel like? What do I feel when I'm in this situation? What does that feel like? What do I feel like when I act on this impulse? What's the result that I get? When we start to do that over time and we notice it over time and we accumulate information over time, that is when we start to develop the awareness that we're looking for when we're working with our feelings. So a lot of the time people ask me, like, how do I tell the difference between a nervous system excitement and actual intuition? And what I'm going to say is noticing how you feel, like what it actually feels like when you think you're having an intuition or when you think you have a nervous system situation, you're not sure which one it is, really notice the subtleties of the feeling. And then follow along with what you would normally do with that feeling and see what the result is. And over time, you're going to recognize, okay, every time it kind of felt subtly like this, that was an intuition. And when it felt subtly more like that, it was actually a nervous system thing. And you get that information and that awareness over time, over repeatedly checking in, how does it feel, and then what was the outcome of that feeling. Yeah? And then with our processing our past stuff, again, anytime you're locked in shame, guilt, or doom, we want to notice what that feels like so that we can check in and say, this is not real, as in this is not true. These shame and guilt stories are not true, and this is what it feels like when I'm thinking a thought that isn't true. Because shame and guilt are always lies. So we have that as a foundation. Whatever it feels like when you think a shameful or a guilty thought, that's your clue that's what it feels like when you're thinking something that isn't true, when you're not seeing reality for how it really is. Second thing is we notice our feelings so that we can say, okay, am I feeling this because I am truly in harm's way right now? Learning to differentiate between trigger of the past and I'm feeling like I'm trapped in my childhood perspective versus this is really a real feeling of something that's happening right now that is painful, or this is a feeling of something that's happening right now that I'm perceiving to be painful that truly isn't. And again, the rest of this course is going to be about helping you have those tools for investigating your outcomes. And again, the big secret of figuring out what your feelings mean is time and observation. The big secret is really just continually showing up and feeling what it feels like, looking at outcome. Is this really true? Testing things out, seeing what happens in real reality, looking at actual outcome. Am I actually unsafe right now? Am I actually safe right now? It's time and accumulation and witnessing over time. I don't think that there is a way to just clear trauma and then see reality clearly, other than practicing feeling on a daily basis. Having the hard rule that anytime something feels like shit, we're questioning it. We're questioning our perception. We're questioning reality. We're questioning what we've been told we have to and shouldn't be doing. We're giving ourselves the benefit of the doubt. I feel what I feel for a reason. Now, what I think it means, it might not be. The reason that I'm giving it might not be the real reason. But I'm feeling it for a reason. And I'm here to feel. So the first step, and in your document, I've given you all the meditations and just the practice of tuning into your body, noticing what you're feeling that feeling as a sensation. Where do you feel it in your body? What does it feel like? Observing. Being able to work through intense waves of feeling and seeing that no feeling lasts forever and no feeling kills you. And that if a feeling is lasting a really long time, it's because we've got thoughts connected with it. So it's like, what am I thinking over and over and over again? Or what do I perceive that I'm experiencing, and is that true? And understanding that if we're just stuck in a negative emotion, that's when we want to back up, we want to orient to what's really happening, to finding the safety that exists right now. And then maybe getting help. Because that, again, if these tools are not helping you to see more clearly, to find more safety, to find more power, we might need help. And there's no shame in that. Okay, so don't force yourself to be in negative feeling over and over and over and over and over again if no resolution is happening, if no clarity is happening, if there's no relief happening, if you're not able to see it's okay, it's just a feeling, if it's constantly overwhelming, get help. That's what we want to do, support ourselves. We need to be able to be witness to our feelings, to be able to feel our feelings and be witness to them, to witness our stories and to separate from the stories so that we can sort reality from unreality. And we need to have the long term in mind. So that's why I say boundaries with the feeling work. Do it every day intentionally so that it's not just an emergency thing that we get stuck in. Have your boundaries. Don't force yourself to be in feeling all day. Feel with intention and then move on. These are the practical tools for how we start with making feeling work a part of our reality. Because again, our feelings have massive intelligence. And the more we work with them and the more we find these patterns and the more we clear the trauma of the past so that we're feeling more in the present, the more we can question, okay, am I feeling this because of this? We can have conversations, we can notice what we're feeling and then what we're thinking, and then we can question that. We can notice what we're feeling and what we're doing, and then we can question that. We can get to that investigation only because we're first practicing feeling the difference between a good feeling, a positive feeling, and a negative feeling. We have to first start with just feeling. So we make that a foundation of our lives now. We're feelers. We're people who understand that feeling is half of our intelligence. And it's a language we learn to speak over time with practice. So we're not going to expect to be fluent in feeling today. We need 10,000 hours or 100,000 hours. But, so every day we practice a little bit and we get smarter and we get more aware. So we start with feeling work is a thing I do every day now because feeling is a part of my life. Feeling is a part of my intelligence. And I want to get more aware through practice. All right? So that's that on that. Next video, we'll talk about validating and then we'll talk about investigation. Okay?